Hello, everyone, and welcome to the October 2022 meeting of the Howard Astronomical League, HAL. Great to see everybody today. And I'm gonna share the slides and we'll get going. And, if you just, if you're not talking, just mute yourself to cut down on the background noise. And if you want to jump in at any time, just unmute yourself and jump on in. So let me share my screen here. Share. And hopefully everybody can see that. So as we always start out here, thanks to Ken Saul for his contributions on the joke of the month. And I guess everybody gets the astronaut joke on the right.
Space bar.
There you go.
Nice. I was working on it.
Yeah.
Can I add an Astro humor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, ready? It's kind of a dad joke. What does the moon do when he needs a haircut? Eclipse.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Apology accepted.
Yeah, stick to your day job.
Yeah, definitely a dad joke. All right. Is there, do we have any, welcome to all the regular members. Do we have any new members on tonight? Do we have any, and I can't see the whole grid because I'm working on a single screen today on my laptop. So normally I could see all of you and the presentation, but I only see a few people at a time. So, if, like I said, I can't see if you're waving your hand or anything. So just unmute. Do we have any guests on tonight? If you're
hi, this is Pete Williams. Hello, everyone. I'm new to the state. I'm also new to HAL. Just joined back in August. So this is my first meeting. Good to be here.
Welcome. Have you been out to any of the star parties yet, Pete?
Not yet. Looking forward to that, though.
Okay, great. So, well, wonderful. Well, welcome to HAL. We're and that's HAL, by the way, HAL, and we're thrilled to have you. Where'd you move here from?
From Texas.
Oh, that was quite a move.
Military.
I'm sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say you didn't move here for the dark skies. So, welcome and thank you for your service.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, everybody else?
Hello, my name is Steve Roll, and I'm a new member. This is my first meeting.
Hi, Steve. Well, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as ironic, 5 minutes ago, UPS knocked on the door. It just delivered my second scope. I got aperture fever, I've been told.
Oh, well, that's why the weather's going to be
Yeah, I was going to say, so much for observing in the near future.
Yeah, now we know who to blame. Thanks for jumping up.
Anyway, I went to my first star party last Friday at Glen Lake School.
Oh, you went to whatever there, yeah.
And I met a few people and I had an awesome time and I saw some things that really kind of set my fire. So my first scope is a 120, the Celestron 127 EQ, which I got the camera and the motor and all that for. But my Orion 8-inch Dobsonian just arrived today. I just finished bringing it in the house, but I'm going to shut up and let y'all go ahead.
Yeah,
Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve. Good to see you again. This is Bob.
Hi, Bob. How are you doing, sir?
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to be seen.
Well, welcome. So any other new members or guests? Hearing none, we'll move along. So Hannah, are you on? Said she was on. Well, Hannah does a great job with our social media Instagram and all that. She's really taken that on, so she's not here to give us an update today. So if she jumps in, we'll just come back to her. And I also, this slide should have actually been before there, as I always do every month. I tell everybody that, you can't do this alone. I can't do this job alone. There's a lot of moving parts with the astronomy club and all these people. And a lot of other volunteers are what makes everything happen on a regular basis. So I appreciate it. And these are the folks, and we have elections coming up, and we're now recruiting and asking for, who wants to do some of these jobs moving forward. It's a great thing. And Jim, I've got, when I get to Jim Johnson, when I get back in town, we'll schedule some time and got some people that have already stepped up and to either continue on or change in positions. So anyway, so thanks to all of these people. And then your webmaster, Ken Sal there. He's doing a fantastic job, as I always say every month, with the website. And we've incorporated into the meeting now Ken's website tips of the month. So Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think I may have allowed you to share our screen. So we stopped.
Where did you get that picture with the hat?
Well, you're the victim of the internet, Ken.
I guess so.
I went searching around the internet for a picture of you, and I found this one.
That's from a while ago. Didn't have HAL on it though at the time. You added that.
I added that.
Okay.
So let me stop it. Are you going to share your screen, Ken? I'll stop sharing that.
Yeah. Host disabled participant.
Yeah. Give me 1 second here, and you will be ready to go. There you go. You're good.
Okay. You should see my browser looking at the home page.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so we're going to do just a 5-minute thing. And all I want to do is cover a few of the things that are on the home page. So many of you already know these things, but depending on how much time you spend on the website, you may not have noticed all the things that we've got here. But anyway, the banner and the menus appear on every single web page. And the menus are self-evident. Let me get rid of that. There we go. The icons go to places you think they should, like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I don't know how many of you have discovered that this HAL logo, wherever you click on any page, you can get back to the home page just by clicking on that. So like if you're on the meetings page.
Does the Illig scope take us to Halo?
Here's what it does. You click on that one, it opens the dome and it points the telescope at your GPS coordinates. So be careful. The rest of the homepage, I'm not going to go over everything here. See if I can get my scroll bar. There we go. But there's 4 main sections: featured, upcoming events, past events, and then did you know? And then there's other kinds of things like the details of, the Zoom information that Phil sends out is usually posted on the website within a day of his email. And then there's other things that are much more static that have been there for a long time. But the way to use this, and I used to call this what's new, but really it's not always new stuff. Sometimes it's certain things I want to keep posted there all the time. So for example, let's say, when Hannah talks about the Instagram, she usually says, well, and there's this form you have to, submission form, and there's a hashtag and so forth. Well, that's all collected here. So if you click on links for HAL's Instagram, it doesn't go to Instagram. It goes to the spot on the page where we have the regular link that does go to the Instagram account. Then it has the link to the submission form. And I lost my back arrow. There we go. Okay. And it also shows you what the hashtag is. And then there's the email address should you need to reach her for some reason. Okay. So do follow all these links. Make sure, to understand what they go to that may be not as obvious as you would like. The upcoming section, I do try to keep at least a month's worth of events here. And of course, every few days, this becomes a little bit out of date. And, I probably update it maybe once a week on average, sometimes not as often. And then when something like, for example, here's today's meeting, it'll drop off and go to the past events, just in case you want to see what you missed, right? If you were out of town, like in, what is it, Minnesota, Phil?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. And then there's just these other things that are more static. So that's all I wanted to show today. And I hope there was something that each of you got from this that you haven't seen before. But we will drill down into more specific things in future months, like 5 minutes at a time, so you don't fall asleep. And that's it. Oh, any questions? Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I appreciate the link being posted because I did something with the link that Phil sent out and couldn't find it. And so I knew, because you told me that it was always there.
Yep.
And so that's how I logged on tonight. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, you guys are thinking of your questions. I just want to point out something that I say a lot, but if you think about all the websites that you go to and the ones that you go back to, how many of those change? They're always the same. They're set up and it's the same thing over and over again. That's not true of our site. And that's one of the reasons I keep pushing, because Ken does such a great job of keeping it updated and having something new going on, even if it's just pictures on the front changing, that it makes the website a living tool, a representation of the club and all of you. So it's great. And I just don't think that, people are used to seeing websites that are, kind of more like living documents, if you will. So
I've been visiting the website much more frequently in the past several months, and I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as you know, this is one of the photos that Cheryl took in Utah, right? And usually if you mouse over, you get a tooltip that tells you, who did what in the, who's the creator. And then if you click, it enlarges. And then if you click again, at least on the desktop, you get this Gigunda view. You can actually see that that's a real person there that she took in this cavern chamber, rather. Anyway,
I thought it was the Dark Person Nebula.
so I will stop sharing and turn it back to you, Phil.
Okay.
Oh, Ken, I wanted to thank you very much for the review. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Especially learning how to move the dome telescope, right?
Let's go back. Show the screen again. Oh, I show the correct screen. Go. And let's see here. Okay, and well, here was another Hannah thing, but she's not there. But I do want to remind everybody that if we're always looking for speakers for the monthly speakers, and we do have somebody that Ken got for us that's going to be talking next month. But if you have a speaker or suggestion, you could just go right to the website, click on the where it says suggested speaker and fills up this form and just put the information in and we'll follow up. So that would be greatly appreciated.
And let me just add, Phil, you don't have to already have gotten that person's permission. I mean, like, let's say you just saw them somewheres on some presentation and you think they might be a good one. That's fine. As long as you've got some way that we can reach them, even if it's just their website, then we'll do the reaching out to that person. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So that's that. You could see that our list of activities, our star parties planned and publicized for this calendar year are coming to an end. So we have this Saturday night is a members only star party. And as I said, the weather should be great because I'm out of town. And although with those new telescopes that are coming in, it could cause a little bit of a weather problem. But and then November 5th is the next public star party and the last one for the season. And then November 19th is the last members only. But I do want to say at this point, though, that the number of impromptus that we've been having has been great. And, you know, and they've been in midweek as well as on the weekend. Sometimes, and I'm out there a lot with Wayne, and then others, and Richard's been out, a few times, and Steve, and some of the new people have been out. We've had a lot of new members that have been coming out to the impromptus. So sometimes it's just 3 or 4 of us, and sometimes there's 10 of us or more. But they're it's great. It's fun to get out there and be out with everybody. And the weather's been cooperating for the most part. We haven't had to break out all the electric clothes yet to keep warm, but that's coming. But then the sky should be better too. So this was coming up, and then we've got the dates planned for next year, and those will be posted pretty soon for when next year's events are.
Yeah, it's really nice seeing the new members out for our impromptus,
Yeah.
getting to meet them and talk to them and see where they're coming from and where they want to go. And so, yeah, so please keep coming.
Yeah, and you don't have to, if you don't have optics, and there's been people that have been coming out, they don't have a telescope or a binocular, they just come out, they could share, with what we're doing and see, watch the people who are imaging, see the imaging. I'm still primarily doing optical, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the pictures with the night vision stuff. And I said optical, I'm doing, looking through the eyepiece. So, so the star parties have been great. It's just a lot of fun to get together. So the Discord group, I don't know if Jared is on or not. Jared's been running our Discord program where the people who participate in that, they have an internal monthly contest, and they are the ones who vote for the picture of the month. They have a target rather, for a particular month. So as I say all the time, we'll be showing 1 month in arrear because you have to wait for the month to finish. And then they do a vote amongst themselves and choose whose was the best picture of that particular target. And in September, it was the Pelican Nebula. And congratulations to Ken Everhart, who did this picture. And Ken, he's probably working today. He's works for Southwest, so he flies a lot. So
Ken also wins the prize for the largest telescope to car ratio in the club.
Yes, it's amazing that he could get that car and that telescope. Yeah, I'll have to put up those pictures. I've got some of them. He's got a Mini and he's got 2 large telescopes that he puts in that thing with all the gear. It's unbelievable. So yeah, you should see when he went out to Green Bank. He couldn't, he had a tent and clothes, and he almost couldn't get his clothes back in the car. That's how tight it was. And I'm not talking about the trunk, I'm talking about the whole car. So anyways, so what's the object? Who is there? Somebody, Ken, Wayne, are you working on the October object?
I'm not actively participating this month, but the object is the Wizard Nebula.
Okay. So we'll see the, well, you'll always get the email, and Ken has it posted long before this meeting comes up on, the winner, but we'll highlight it here at the meeting like we always do.
Yeah, there's already been some good images
Yeah.
put onto the group.
So, anybody else have any announcements that you want to make or anything you want to talk about before we get into tonight's topic? Hearing none. So tonight, we've had a lot of people ask, what's the best telescope? And, what should I get? And it's funny, just before this meeting, somebody sent me an email, said my husband and I met you several weeks ago during the stargazing party and was talking about telescopes and could they get any help? Then I just read that before we got online here. I sent back a note and said, get on the link and join this meeting. So I don't know if you're on or not. So that's what this topic is. So what I'm hoping for, what I'm looking for here is that this is going to be a very interactive meeting, not necessarily me lecturing. We'll talk about different scenarios, but is there, if there's anybody on today that's kind of really interested in this topic and looking for what their telescope should be, whether it's a first telescope or an upgrade, unmute yourself and say hello, and he's going to ask you questions about what you're looking for, and then we have a whole group of experts here that could help out. Otherwise, we're going to be talking to ourselves.
Hi, this is Pete again. So I haven't gotten around to getting a telescope. I thought that I'd kind of crawl before I walked, and so I over the summer I got a pair of Celestron binos.
Yeah,
Good plan.
Yeah, I just wanted to get familiar and comfortable with with using them before. My goal is to probably spring for a telescope by next summer.
okay.
So yeah, I plan on attending the star party in a couple days, just so I can just see how folks use their equipment, because I'm brand new and I don't know what I don't know at this point.
Yeah. No, that's the right way to do it. I think you'll find that a lot of people in the club, that's how they got started, whether it was here at HAL or another club before HAL existed. I know in the 1980s, when I moved into the area, I was interested in telescope, and I spent the first year or more going to the different star parties and looking at what other people were doing to try and help see what I wanted to get. So so the question is, what is the best telescope? And, there's a lot of people here on this call that know the answer to that one, and that's the telescope that gets used. And you could get a big, beautiful, top of the line telescope and mount and system and everything else. And so many pieces and parts, it becomes such a hassle to pull out. You want to go out, but you don't want to be bothered with the, how much hassle it is. Or it could be too heavy. There is a law of physics that some of us are aware of that doesn't get taught in school. That is, as you get older, all your telescope gear gets heavier. So, so you want to get the telescope that's, and what I'm going to do here to let everybody know what's coming. I just have a couple of slides that just identify things. We're not going to stop and talk about each one of them. It's just kind of to build the thinking points and the talking points, Pete, and for others. So what that is things to be considered. And if you come up with something that needs to be considered after I go through these next few slides, please jump right in, because I tried to kind of cover it all when I was putting this together. One is your budget. How much money you should have an amount of money in mind, because you could spend hundreds of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're getting something that is way beyond your budget, or you get your heart set on it, then you're not going to be able to get it. Then that's not a good plan. On the other side, if you have the ability to get a larger aperture, better quality, and everything else like that, and you have the money for it, you should know. So it's really important to have an idea of how much money you should budget, and we could talk about that as we go through this in details. The other one is, what do you want to see? Now you may not know that answer to that question when you're new. You may not know what you want to get at, especially with kids, it's like, how powerful could I get this? How close could I get in and everything else like that. And then you're going to find as you get more and more into it, you're looking for wider and wider views and not necessarily closer and closer views, depending on where your interest is. So it's different tools. Where are you going to do most of your observing? If you're going to do it around where we live, which has got a lot of light pollution, that's different than maybe a decision you'll make if you're going to be in really dark skies or darker skies like where Cheryl's moved in out to in West Virginia. So these are things that you want to know. Do you want to image with a camera? And what I mean by imaging with a camera, you can do sketching, you can do things from looking through the eyepiece and do all kinds of other things. But do you want to image with a camera? That'll make a difference on the type of telescope and the type of mount you get. Portability. Portability is very much subjective on what's portable and what's a pain or not portable. But these are things, and then where do you have a place to store it? That's really, we don't talk about that much, but storing your telescope properly is critically important. And I'll just use myself as an example. Many of the people in this call here today, they've seen, my telescopes, and the two telescopes that I'm using, one I took delivery of in 1989, and the other one I took delivery of a few years later. And those are my primary telescopes. And, it's one of the things, if you buy good quality and you take care of them properly, and storing is important, then they're going to last. And, but if you store improperly, and I've got a slide to show, I can show you what happens. So these are things to be considered when you're making a decision. And then kind of what will you need? You want to make sure you have a red headlamp or a red flashlight of some kind, because you can't be using white light because it shrinks your pupils, closes your pupils down so small that it ruins what we call your night vision. And you need your pupils wide open so you can get as much light as you can. A planisphere or some kind of sky charts, so you could find what's up in the sky and learn the sky. You're going to need to budget for eyepieces, and we can talk more about that if you have questions. And different kinds of finders to go on your scope to make it easier to locate things in the sky. In this geography, you're going to need a dew heater, because things get dewed up very quickly, and you can't take a cloth and wipe the dew off your telescope. It's not good, and it doesn't work either. So you want to keep the dew from forming on your telescope. So dew heaters are important. The kind of cases, there's a never-ending discussion on cases, and then filters for different types of observing. So these are things to consider. They don't all have to be purchased at one time. You just collect and collect and collect over the years, because we know the old joke. The nice thing about standards is everybody's got one. But the reality in the telescope world, the standards are really not that many. And that means that what you buy for one telescope will transfer most of the time to another telescope as far as your eyepieces and certain accessories, and which is really great. So if you have multiple optical devices, you can move your parts around, and that's where cases become important on making sure you didn't forget something that you're using for one system and not another. But like I said, you just could build and build and build over the years. People are looking for something to get you for the holidays or your birthday. You can always use something for the telescope, I think. So, we talked about the budgeting and how important that is. And then what you want to see, what I'm saying by that is, do you want to look at, nebulas? These pictures are pictures from the people in this call here, but they've taken, what is it that you want to see with your telescope? So we have everything from the moon to nebulas. I didn't put any clusters on here. We'll see some pictures later on. The sun in hydrogen alpha or in white light. So these are the kind of things that you want to look at. What is it where's your priority? Or do you want to look at all of it? That's fine. And then where we do most of your observing, this kind of talks to that point. And you can see, you know, we're out at Alpha Ridge there, a little bit overexposed to make it, it wasn't quite dark yet, but it wasn't quite that bright either. Or are you gonna be in your backyard, or are you gonna be out at Blackwater Wildlife Refuge, where that picture at the bottom was taken, with just a camera with no telescope? So in portability, it's going to be different if you're going to have the James Webb Space Telescope, or so these are the things that we'll talk about. And once again, I didn't talk about binocular, but you know, when we can talk about that, because you know, Richard's got some nice binocular, and you can use, you know, the kind of binocular that you would take out to look at wildlife and look up, or you could get something that's more made for looking up at the sky and the stars and objects like that. And, you know, if you're going to get a large binocular, you're going to need a mount to hold them on, but you can't hold them steady, no matter how strong you are or how young you are. So this just kind of put some thoughts in your mind before we get into the conversation. And then the storage part, what I was talking about was, you know, you can see that, you know, a case with these different eyepieces and different accessories in it, where people are keeping them. And what happens is, what you see down in the bottom left there is that's mold on a mirror, and that mold is alive. It etches itself into the mirror itself, and you can't get that out of there. It's not something that can be buffed out or anything else. It's just destroyed, and that's because that mirror was kept in a damp environment, and you know, like in a basement, you know, and it's moist down there, and it grows. It's alive, and so you want to keep your telescope in a nice dry space if you can, and keep the lens covers on them, and you know, make sure you air them out if you're not using it for a while. And then one with the police box was kind of funny. That's actually somebody's outdoor cover for their telescope in their yard. It's their little observatory, and then you see all the cases.
In the UK, presumably.
Yeah. So, you know, we could start there, and then what I've gone here and the future and these slides and looking forward is just how different telescopes work and things like that. But Pete or anybody else, was that helpful for you to start? And what kind of questions do you have?
No, that was very helpful. Starts getting my wheels turning in a certain direction. I was a little overwhelmed by just everything that's available. So yeah, it starts to kind of clarify things a lot. Thank you.
Is there any specific questions that are, you know, like that are really got you thinking about that the folks on this call can help you with?
A lot of the vendors that I've spoken to, they have showrooms, and I haven't made it out there yet, but you know, like with anything, you know, a vendor's probably going to want to sell you, you know, they're probably going to want to, you know, steer you towards, you know, their top of the line stuff. You know, how do you avoid getting, you know, just buying this really, you know, expensive piece of equipment and then getting disenchanted with it because you don't know how to use it?
I think having a discussion like we're having today is probably the best way to deal with that. But the other thing is you can do, I think, is set your budget.
So by that, what Wayne said, I couldn't agree more, is that it's not about buying the biggest telescope you could get for the money you have. It's about getting the highest quality telescope you could get for the money you have. Because, you know, if you have a big mirror or something like that, but it's very poor quality, or the mount is very shaky, and we can talk about that, then you're going to be really unhappy with it, and you're not going to want to use it. But if you got something that may not be as big, because of where your budget's set, but you have very high quality, you're going to be much happier. So that's a good place to start. And you know, one thing, Pete, is that most of the people that we know in this community that sells things, you really don't have to worry about them overselling you. In fact, there's one that you have to worry about getting him to sell you something because he's going to want to educate you forever. And then, and we're being recorded, and this is going to be on YouTube, so I'm not going to start throwing out names, but because he's a perfectionist and he'll never oversell you. But again, a good point, you got to just make a decision at some point. So you kind of have the other problem in the other way. Ironically enough, it's not worried about somebody taking advantage of you. It's more of, you want to get into it and get going. You just don't want to read about it forever.
I mean, I would say as you're looking around that you want to avoid what we refer to as department store telescopes. Basically, if the telescope is advertised on the basis of the magnification it will provide, you might want to walk away from that one, because magnification is actually not one of the main selling points of a telescope. The main thing a telescope does is it gathers light and gives you the ability to see faint objects that you can't see otherwise. Magnification helps in a few places, like with planets, lunar, planetary, solar, and double stars. And beyond that, magnification is a secondary consideration. Not important, but it's a secondary consideration. So if the advertising is based, you can get 14,000 power magnification out of this telescope, I'd turn around and walk away from it.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Steve again. Let me see. I got my first telescope when I was a kid, second grade, and my first telescope as an adult was a Celestron 70mm, of which I since then passed down to my oldest daughter. I bought the 127 EQ, and I went all out. I bought the case. I bought a camera. The camera is a ZWO. I don't even know the model. I got to look at it. ZWO AS120MC S12. It's the base model camera. It's something I could afford. But I'm not into imaging because I'm not a photographer, but eventually I will be, because I will have to learn how to image. I would have to learn how to set the ISO, set the time lapse and things like that. I basically want to see with my own eye what things look like, and I want to see everything that I can see. But I want to start small. I'm aware that I'm crawling before I can walk. But as I'm around people, like when I came to the Star Party, I ran into a glitch with my first telescope. I took it apart and didn't put it back together properly. I wound up taking it to Todd Rosenberg. He tried to recombinate it for me. I brought it back. I ran into a guy who is great, Gary Engel. Oh, that's my new bestest friend that's in the world. He got it straight. It is spot on. And my new one just arrived today, and he told me I have aperture fever, and I already told him, I said, well, you're going to down the road computerize it, motorize it for me. I didn't get that because he suggested it, because where I got it from didn't offer it, and it just wasn't in my budget. So I think I have enough telescope equipment, eyepieces, filters for now. And I'm just going to use what I have, learn as I go, get the most out of what I've got, and progress from there. A couple of years down the road, I might buy one final scope. I may not. It all depends. I had the pleasure of seeing Jupiter through the observatory's telescope. And for the first time in my life, and I'm 64, as much as I love space, as much as I love the stars, it was the first time I saw Jupiter and Saturn through a quality telescope. It just blew me away. A gentleman had a 12-inch, and I apologize, I can't remember his name, had a 12-inch Dobsonian. He said, come here, let me show you something. Look through here. I looked through there, and he all but talked me into getting a Dobsonian, which is why I have the 8-inch. Again, I couldn't get the 10-inch. I didn't think I wanted to carry all the weight and all of this stuff. And I have the Telrad, that'd be here next week. have the red light flashlight, and I'm off to the races with this thing. As you can tell, I'm excited. Mars is directly over Beetlejuice right now, and it's on my deck 5 o'clock in the morning, straight above me. But that's I've been on YouTube and I'm listening to folks, and I've come to the conclusion that if I just use what I have now, I plan on trying to use the 127 for imaging, and I'm going to use the Dobsonian just for viewing. And basically, I just want to view with my eye. I'm not concerned with pictures, taking pictures, stacking. That's just too much for me right now. I just want to look and see and enjoy and learn as I go. And I'm probably going to stop for a minute because I was listening to the gentleman that just moved here from the military. So he's going to wait till next summer and get his scope. I've seen some scopes and they've made me drool, but I said, no, Steve, you don't know what you're doing. You don't even know if you're going to stick with this that long, which I've been doing it my whole life off and on, but I've just decided to take the plunge because I'm old enough to do what I want to do, I think. But I am happy to be with you guys, and I'm learning and listening and learning. I don't have any questions per se right at this time, but I do have a bunch of them when I see you. And I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment.
Now, Steve, I tell you that you're right there. I mean, the single most important thing is that you're having fun.
I have what, sir?
That you're enjoying yourself. You know, the great thing about being in the club is you could share through other people's telescopes. You know, for the ones like myself who haven't seen more than not, you know, you could always come look through those telescopes and enjoy them, and or you could watch people image and see what it takes, and you know, and also don't let that part scare you away either, because you don't have to have, you know, like this system right here you see on the screen there with the camera and the filter wheel and the other camera that's sticking out there for guiding on the side there. It's called off-axis guider. You know, you could get a $39 webcam and put it on your telescope and get some pictures. Okay. And it just depends on, you know, taking the pictures, one thing, processing is another, but enjoying yourself. And it's not a matter of trying to keep up with anybody or catch up with anybody. It's just, you do what you get. We had, it was a while back now. It was not this season, but maybe it was early this year when we were set up at our other park, Carr's Mill. And one of the people that came out there, who's a member, her hobby is counting meteorites and satellites as they go overhead. And she went out and down in the field out there on her back, and all night long she was just counting. And that's her hobby. That's how she enjoys it. And then you'll see from these meetings that you're in, we have members that they do variable star observing, and they're using spectroscopy, and Wayne's into that also. But you know, then they're showing graphs and charts and things like that. And some other people have some radio telescope kind of things that they do. So everybody's got their different ways of observing and enjoying. The most important part, it's not about graduating from one telescope to another. You usually, the nice thing is when you go to get your next telescope, if you do that, you're getting it specifically for something that you know you want to do, which is something you really don't have the knowledge of when you first start, because you really, unless you've been out with others for a long time and doing things, you may not know where your interest is going to fall.
Right.
And so you're right on the right track, and kind of like a role model for anybody else who wants to join the club and just be out with everybody else. And
thanks, Bill. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you'll have a blast. So, you know, I'm just kind of step through these things as you guys have some pick questions or comments. And this is Brad's telescope. Brad, I know you're on. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Well, this is one of my telescopes. This is my main imaging telescope. It's a 130 millimeter apochromatic refractor. And a refractor means that it has a glass lens that the light goes through. Yeah. And it's apochromatic, which there's essentially two types of refractors that you can buy. There's achromatic that have a two lens system objective, and a apochromatic has a triple lens system. And essentially if you've got a triple lens system, an apochromatic, when you look through, it's able to focus the light so that you don't see what's called chromatic aberration, which on less expensive refractor telescopes, you'll see like on a limb of the moon, like purple, or like on bright stars, you'll see like a purple bit that is the chromatic aberration. Anyway, the main thing that I want to talk about on mine is the way that Phil was saying at the beginning, that the telescope that's the best telescope is the one that you use. There's something that I did to this telescope that allows me to use it. And that's if you look at the bottom of the tripod, there's those wheels on the bottom. This setup is so heavy that I wouldn't be able to move it all in one piece. It would be, I would have to move out the tripod legs, and then I'd have to move out one piece of the mount, and then the second piece of the mount, and then the telescope, and line everything up. And it would, if I had to do all that every time I wanted to use this telescope, I wouldn't use it anywhere near as often as I do. And just by simply adding these wheels on the bottom of it, I'm actually able to wheel it out without having to pick anything up right onto my deck. And that's how I use it. Whenever it's clear, I wheel it right out. And I can tell you for sure I would not if I had to carry the whole thing out every time. I wouldn't use it. So that the company that I got those wheels from is called Scope Rollers. They're made in Poland. They're really nice.
Yeah. Now, the key with that for everybody is make sure you have a place that you can roll from too.
Well,
So-
yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if I had a level area coming out from my garage, I probably wouldn't be doing this on my deck, because, you know, there's a whole host of problems that come from having it be on the floorboards. Like, for instance, when I'm doing my polar alignment, I have to go back into the house after every adjustment, because me standing there next to the scope or even on the deck at all changes the position of the axis of my RA. So I actually have to walk back in the house every time to see, but I've gotten pretty good at figuring out.
Yes, I had a very similar issue. I would have to put my phone on 10 second timer just every single time I took a photo, and I would run out, check it, hit it, run back in the house. I was on a deck.
Yep, bounces it all around.
Hey, Brad, I have a question about storage. What do you do when it rains?
Well, I have like a 3-season room that is attached to my deck. And so I roll it in there and it's safe in there. You know, it's,
okay.
It does get barely below freezing in there if it's really, really cold out. But I think that that's okay. And it stays perfectly dry in there.
Good, thank you.
So for those of you who want to know, the mount that Brad has there is made by a company called Osmody, and the model is the G11. And I know that because I have it also. The difference with yours, Brad, from mine is you got yours after I got mine. If everybody wants to know when to buy something, date it the day after I got mine, because that's when the newer design will. So
you don't have the spring-loaded worm in yours?
Legs fold in, which is nice, where I have to, mine are separate pieces. I have to put them all together every time.
So something that has been kind of mentioned, you can go to the next slide. It actually is a good one. Something that has been mentioned that needs to be considered is that refractors, you typically don't have to do adjustments to the optics, but reflecting telescopes like the Newtonian that's shown here, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. This isn't a Dobsonian telescope, it's a Dobsonian mount.
Mount, right, yeah, and I've got a Newtonian thing on there coming up because of exactly what you said.
But anyway, reflecting telescopes, you have to periodically, depending on how you treat it, adjust the mirrors to get the best images out of them. And that can be kind of a fiddly, and if you're new to the hobby, a scary thing to have to do. So if you're not really comfortable mechanically or whatever, maybe a refractor is the better thing, the better type of telescope for you.
So, and once again, it comes down to what do you want to see, and there's no such thing as one is better than the other. They're different telescopes for different types of viewing. So this is called a Dobsonian, and as Wayne correctly pointed out, it's really a Newtonian on a Dobsonian mount. And they can get very large. You see the guy on the right who's actually a scientist, astronomer, PhD from Northwestern University, and he's actually in charge of one of the science projects for putting the gravitational wave detector in space that's going to launch in the 2030s. And hopefully he'll be one of our guest speakers in the future. But those are his telescopes. And I've looked through that big one out of Green Bank when he was out, and it was awesome. But but the nice thing with the Dobsonian style telescope is they're very easy. You know, the smaller ones, like from Orion or this white one here, when I say smaller, I mean the 8, the 10, and the 12-inch, you could pick them up in 2 pieces and you could set them out wherever you're going, and you are up and running almost instantaneously. And that is, so you get a nice quality telescope at a really good price in most cases, as long as they're in your budget. So that's all a relative thing, but they're relatively inexpensive until you get to the larger ones, and you get a lot of aperture. And by getting a lot of aperture means you get more photons, and you be able to see fainter things farther away, and you'll see things that you'll get larger views of other objects based on your magnification with your eyepiece and the larger mirrors. So anybody have anything you want to say about Dobsonians? Commentaries? And once again, they do require potentially collimation depending on how much they get jarred around. And maybe somebody, I'm not a mirror telescope owner except for my little Questar, but maybe somebody wants to explain to what it means to collimate, why you do that. Anybody want to jump in who's doing this?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and talk a little bit. I have an 18-inch obsession, which is a lot like the guy standing there in the field, the one that he's got his hand on, that you need a ladder for. What's nice about the large Dobs is that you do collect all the photons. The 18-inch is it's beautiful if you're looking for small galaxies, or if you're looking at globular clusters and you like the image of them being resolved down mostly to the core, then it's the big Dobs that you would be going after. But I don't use it that much because to really appreciate one, you must have it out under a fairly dark sky. And although I love it, it's not as used as much as my smaller refractors within the suburban area. Collimation is a problem. The bigger the Dob, the smaller the combination. The sweet spot on my 18-inch Dobsonian is around 1/8 of an inch in size. In other words, to get it to be as perfect as you do with most refractors without ever having to touch with them, you've got to collimate your primary, secondary mirror to within 1/8 of an inch. And it's doable. And with good laser collimators, or even without laser collimators, which is regular collimators, you can do that. But you generally end up doing it once every time you take it out after there's been a ride in the car, or if you go through the night, you find yourself that you will be star testing the stars to make sure that it hasn't slightly slid out of collimation. So it is there, and it is a little bit of a hassle, but the views through a big Dob cannot be matched visually by any other type of telescope.
And when something's not collimated correctly, Richard, how do you know? What does it look like if it's not collimated correctly?
As long as it gives a good star test, you're fine.
No, but I mean, if somebody's looking through it and they don't have any experience, how would they be able to just visually take a look and say, this is going to require some collimation. What will they see that'll be the clue that it's off?
Generally, if the collimation is a little bit off, they won't notice. The image will be good, but you won't be getting the full size of the Dobsonian itself. Some of the light will be lost. If the collimation is way off, then yes, you will notice.
Yeah.
You will notice because there is distortion involved. But if it's close, I have seen people that just love their Dobsonian telescopes, and you start testing and their collimation is just pathetic. But still, if you have an 18-inch Dob and your collimation is off and you're at low power and you're seeing the sky as you would see it with a 12-inch, that's still pretty nice. But if you're going to get a big Dob, you want to use the maximum of the mirror. You want to have the best quality of image. And if you do get it correctly collimated and you have good optics, you just can't beat them. There is nothing, even on the planets, if you got good collimation on a large Dob, nothing can touch it, assuming the sky is going to let you reach for it.
So, and just for those who are going to watch this on YouTube or maybe in this meeting here today, is that to get a refractor that's going to give you that kind of light gap, and one is going to be gigantic, and it's also can be way, 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 way expensive. I mean, you're talking about observatory grade telescopes at that point, refractors, to get that kind of resolution. So Newtonian and Dobsonian style, you really get tremendous bang for your investment. The bigger the mirror, the higher quality the mirror, and the wavelengths and all those other things that they use for measuring it will increase the cost of it. But it's really a very economical way to go. What's the downside? If you have a large one, that mirror box on the bottom is really heavy, right? I mean, Richard, could you still move yours by yourself?
I have mine on roller bars. That's how Obsession makes theirs. So
Okay.
I use planks that I roll it up in the car, the mirror box. And it's pretty portable. I find that I can set up my 18-inch Dob. It's a lot heavier, but I can set my 18-inch Dob up about as fast as I can my G11 equatorial mount. It takes about the same time. Maybe the Dob's a little faster to set up, but it does take time for it to cool down too.
Don't you have to use a ladder though to look through it?
My eyepiece on the 18-inch, which is a 4.5 focal length, is straight overhead, 6 feet 6 inches. I'm 5'10" and a half. So a small step stool or ladder is necessary if I'm working towards the zenith.
This is Crystal. I'll add to the flip side of that. I discovered recently, with the help of some of the HAL members, that I have a Dobsonian in pieces in our observatory. And I found that one, I don't know how to put it together. I found the rods for it, but it's missing screws and it's missing quite a few things. And my issue is that it's way too heavy for me. I can't lift the base with just the mirror cover alone and the base itself. That's not a telescope that's very user friendly for me, just because of the weight alone and that it doesn't have rollers on it. It's also made out of entirely wood. The wood is very thick and very difficult to transport. So I bet it's a great telescope, but to make a point on how important that portability is and finding a telescope that fits your needs, I don't know if that telescope will get a lot of use, just because I don't have the knowledge of how to maintain it, and also that it's heavy for me to transport.
So Crystal, it's a perfect example of what the theme of this is about. It's like choosing the right telescope is the one you're going to use. it's matching it to your capabilities. I mean, sometimes you could have all the money in the world to get whatever you want, but you probably need to get a butler or somebody to move it if you don't have the ability to do it yourself. So there's a good example, Crystal, of, you have access to probably what's a nice telescope if it's all put together and cleaned up, right? But you couldn't pull it out yourself. So that would be a bad decision for you, sounds like, if you were out investing in something new and looking at that. And for others, they'll be in a different situation. So that was a great example. So Crystal's over at for those of you who don't know, Crystal, why don't you tell everybody, where you work and what you do? And I know I remember Steve, I think, mentioned he was out at your star party last Friday, which I wasn't able to attend. I'm sorry. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Crystal Rowland. I actually teach at Glenelg Country School in the area, of course. And I started there recently. This is only my 3rd year there. And they have an observatory that, for the longest time, maybe close to 7, 8 years or so, was just not in use. It was locked up, boarded up. The telescope and the room itself at one point had water damage or something had happened to where a lot of moisture damaged a ton of equipment, including a 6-inch refractor that had to be sent back to astrophysics to be restored. So there's a key point on the importance of storage. But what my job has been is, one, hosting star parties, restoring the use of the facility for students, mostly as an educational space, and also expanding it out to our community so they have a public and local kind of observatory to come to as often as they can. So I'm very new to observational astronomy. I volunteered during college just because it was a fun thing to do. So a lot of the equipment I'm kind of learning as I go. So I have the amateur's dream of lots of equipment already there. The money was already invested in this great observatory in this great space, but it was underutilized for nearly a decade. So my goal is to really bring it back to life, get people seeing Jupiter and Saturn through the eyepiece. I'm starting to see if I can maybe add astrophotography to our available things. And so it's a journey that I'm luckily have the privilege of starting because people like in HAL have given their expertise and who have come out to that campus either through the star parties or, personal invite and given me a lot of feedback. So that's kind of who I am and what I do. And yeah.
That's great. And, and it is great what you're doing. And we're thrilled that you're out there because it's not a competition with astronomy clubs. We have many in our area. In our mid-Atlantic region, there's over 30 astronomy clubs. It's hard to believe. And there's probably not very many dark skies outside of West Virginia and some places in Pennsylvania. So to have that many people and having you so close to and in Howard County is great. And so the partnership is wonderful between the organizations, and it'll always continue that way. So, and it's really good what you're doing with that because Richard was part of that for a long time before and helping them to get that thing all put together. And then, like you said, it wasn't taken care of well and used, and now you're building it back up. So thank you very much. Congratulations. So keep moving on here. So the Newtonian works exactly the same way as the Dobsonian, as Wayne pointed out. But you could see here that these telescopes are not not mounted in the same way, that they're up on a tripod like you would see red refractor or Schmidt-Cassegrain, which were coming up doing things like that. So I believe there's a picture. Dwayne, I know you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
So let me just set you up there, Dwayne. What I really like about Dwayne's setup here, and he'll share the details with you, but he's got a very capable telescope system here that has a very relatively low investment in there as far as dollars are concerned. and he does a lot of stuff with it. So there's your intro.
All right, yes. Maybe I could share my screen.
Okay, let me
Show you some more.
You could share yours. Hold on.
As you can see, it's on a deck too.
Yeah,
And I had a lot of difficulty with that.
there you go. You can share your screen.
All right, let me see here. Oh, it's the big green button. All right. There we go. Okay. You guys should see my screen.
Yep.
All right, great. So yes, with my smartphone alone in that setup, it was a simple equatorial. I was able to take tons of amazing pictures through the telescope just with a simple mount. And you can see the setup. I bought a cheap little smartphone mount, and it had a clock drive that I was able to buy for also like $50, and for like $500, this was a complete astrophotography setup. All I had to do was add my smartphone, and it was amazing what I was able to take with it in the first year or two of learning how to use this. Some of the pictures are incredibly detailed, and I feel like this is the perfect example of what you can see through a telescope. As when you look at smartphone astrophotography on a decent sized telescope, not one of these large ones, this is what the Orion Nebula looks like in your eye. It's a very good example of visual.
Only without the color.
Some people see the color.
Not in our skies.
Not in a 5-inch telescope.
You know, and being able to see the lunar X happens once a month in just for a couple hours. There's and then yes, I got to see the solar eclipse through, and I chose my smartphone. At this point, I had already purchased a planetary camera like somebody was talking about earlier, the ASI. And I chose to use my smartphone because the planetary camera was too central and couldn't see the whole solar eclipse. And my smartphone was able to see it. So that was and then yes, I did the lunar eclipse with my smartphone, because again, the high-end camera doesn't see it. And so
Reason, by the way, so people know, it's not that they don't see it, it's just that the particular camera that Dwayne was using, the chip wasn't large enough to get the entire image in there. So once again, just like choosing the right telescope, when you're going to do imaging, you want to choose the right camera, and between color and monochrome and what size chip, and it's also related to budget and things like that. So that's the reason. So what Dwayne is saying is exactly accurate, but I want to make sure for those of you who are new in this meeting today and those who are watching on YouTube at another time, that's the reason is the chip size on that particular camera relative to the telescope and the stuff that he had. So
thank you.
I have a question, Dwayne.
Yes.
Yeah. On the pictures that you are showing here on your sharing your screen, are all of those pictures timed, or are they through the eyepiece pictures that you took that are a fraction of a second?
So let me go back here. that was my ASI 224, but the smartphone pictures, many of these are of varying time speeds and ISOs, depending on the target. Like if I wanted to capture Titan here, I had to blur out Saturn.
Got it.
So I had to really take a huge ISO and time on that picture. But, and yes, like to see Saturn, Mars, and Aries in the same picture, that probably took a little bit more time. Whereas like to actually look at Saturn and see the rings with my smartphone, this to me is so visually exactly what it would be like when you look at it through my telescope.
Exactly. That was the point. You know, when people come and look through the telescopes at the star parties, they can't see as much as the photographs that are stacked and processed and so forth.
Right. And so I did eventually purchase a really nice camera to take pictures like the Orion Nebula. With my setup, and this is the problem with the cheap mount, I would say, is that I cannot get more than 10 seconds of tracking, no matter how accurate of a polar alignment I have with my, and even if I'm not on my deck, it doesn't matter. My cheaper mount just will not give me more than 10 seconds. And that's as clear as a picture of that as I can get.
Okay, thank you.
But with planetary, I'm able to do with enough. And here, let me show you. This is what I wanted to show next was with my ASI 2024, I was able to take hundreds of frames a second to get Jupiter and to see the red lines, not like I see through my eye in my telescope, but I was able to use all those tools, Registax, PIP, and you change those little wavelets and all of a sudden it's sharp. It blows my mind what these programs can do. And this is, again, like a $300 camera I added to my telescope that is just made for the telescope. That's all it does.
Got it. Thanks.
A much better picture of Saturn. A much better picture of Orion Nebula. But it doesn't look like that to you in a telescope.
Exactly.
And then, oh yeah, here's actually a couple hours worth of pictures where you see some of the moons. And this is something you'll see with your eye visually. It just won't look that good unless you got something really nice.
That is wild that you got that on that rig. That is super impressive, man.
Yeah, a little 5-inch reflector.
So Dwayne, now you can see from the reaction while I was communicating with you on email, telling you how important that your part of this meeting is tonight, because we have over 350 members in the club now. And when we show the highlighted pictures, that the fantastic work that you guys all do, and with the processing and everything else and what it takes to get there, it scares people off that, a lot of times, and sometimes we're known, some people think we're just an imaging club.
Yeah.
So much more.
I do not have $1,000.
Here you're able to demonstrate with a very modest setup and just what you could do.
Yeah, I do not even have $1,000 into all this, except for like I had a nice, really Surface laptop that was high end for audio and video editing before. That just it was important with the camera to be able to take like 300 frames per second on the field of imagery.
Oh, this
And
is-
yeah, the first time I took Cassini's and I was able to see Cassini's division or whatever, I was blown away. It's like, I couldn't believe I could see that with my telescope. And then, yes, I did 7 months of the Mars opposition last year or 2 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago now, sorry. But yes. All right.
That's fantastic. Any
Yeah,
questions?
it was a big dust storm. It was a shame. That was the best picture. But yes, with my 5-inch, I was able to see the polar cap. And I'm sure somebody else could point out other features if they knew what they were looking at. I do not. All right, I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much. Awesome.
Guys, thank you.
Very good. Just go back to sharing my screen here. I've got the right one.
Can I ask a question of Dwayne?
Go ahead.
This is Steve. Dwayne, your setup kind of looks like it's equal to a 127 EQ. Is that correct?
Yes, I think
my
that's
God.
exactly the same.
If I'd have known what you know, you're getting a lot out of that, so I can get a lot out of mine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you guys come out to a star party, set up next to each other, and it's really helpful. So
Thank you. I just want outstanding work, man. It looks good. And
Good luck,
and
man.
I'm like, thank you, sir.
Awesome.
So you have the Schmidt-Cassegrains, which are also mirror telescopes. And this is another type of setup, depending on the size. There are some here, when you get to the big beads, like this one on the left here, which isn't that big, but there's some really big, 12, 14-inch ones. They're used sometimes a lot more just for imaging than for actual visual observing. But here's another telescope, especially from Celestron. They have excellent packages that are so affordable. I'm talking about complete kits with go-to mounts, an 8-inch telescope on there, and it comes with some eyepieces, I believe, and a kit. And there's some other accessories there with it. But the whole setup there is, with the supply chain issues and COVID and stuff, everything's going up in price, but it's still about $1,200 before you start having to get some accessories, which is very like an unbelievable price for a quality product. And we have a lot of members who are using these types of scopes, and you see them, and some of the outstanding work that is done with these type of telescopes. I think I have Matt. Are you on? So this is a picture that Matt sent. Anybody else that's using the SCT that you want to kind of talk about and share your experience, good, bad, or indifferent? No? Okay. Well, like I said, I'm not an owner of one of these, but I've been around them a lot. And especially, if you got a budget that's in, what I would say around $1,500 or so to get started with the accessories and other things that you need to get, do covers and stuff like that. The 6 or the 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain Celestron with the mount setup, which is an AVX mounts most of the time, is really is a good buy.
I can say a few words about these kinds of telescopes, just in
Please do.
general.
Yep.
These telescopes are typically pretty good optically. The Schmidt-Cassegrain has some basic optical issues that it can't overcome because of its design, but they give you good quality images. And what they really do is they provide you a long focal length telescope in a very compact package, which means you can typically have a larger aperture and still be able to handle it. If you have an 8-inch f10 Newtonian, I mean, your tube is, pushing 100 inches long, 90, 100 inches long, whereas this 8-inch f10 Schmidt Cassegrain is 14 or 15 inches long. So, they're very nice and compact, which makes them relatively portable. So if you're looking for portability, and if you have some physical issues or concerns where you maybe can't lift the weight or handle the bulk, a Schmidt Cassegrain could be a good way to go.
Thank you very much.
And it is not spelled Grane, it's Grain.
Yes. Oh, right.
Just FYI.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'd never seen it spelled that way. So for a moment I was having a crisis. Like, have I been wrong this whole time?
No, it's just me to see if you guys are actually paying attention to the work I put into these meetings, or, so now that I know you're reading them, I'll be more careful. So Ken, I'll fix it for the thing, but it's always going to be in the YouTube, so. All right, so here's some pictures of some telescopes and some of our members from the Florida Star Party. That was the last one before everything shut down, COVID, we were at. So you see up in the left there, Dobsonian setup, and you see the Schmidt Cassegrain there behind Joanne on the right, and then you got me down there with my 5-inch refractor and my whole setup there with the computer and all the cases and the tents, and we had a good time down there. So nice skies. Got to see some Southern Hemisphere stuff that you can see from the Florida Keys. So it was cool, it was fun. And then here's this guy, he's actually lives in Baltimore, and he's got this giant Dob there on the left, and it was really windy right there on the waterfront. And that thing would swing around like it was a windmill when the wind caught it. So he had to tie it down with bungee cords when he wasn't using it to keep it from getting damaged or just spinning around. But it was huge, and he had some really cool views from that thing. So that's one that you're not going to carry around to a one-night star party, I can tell you that. It was big. But this other one was kind of high tech on the right side there, and that ball on the bottom made it really interesting to see, because what it allowed him to do is he could point it straight up. And forget what it's called. Maybe Richard or somebody knows.
Portable.
What's that?
I think that's a portable, isn't it?
Yeah, portable.
Yeah, you get to see that. That was kind of a cool telescope. And then this was completely handmade from using different things. I mean, just like scrap. Kind of like if you're watching some of these cooking shows where they take all these different crazy ingredients and they make these fantastic meals. This guy, he basically lived in his truck, but he had built this telescope, and the reason it's got that shape, kind of like a shark fin on there, is because he put two telescopes together, and it was incredible views. He built that mount; it was rock solid. Everything was built from scrapyard stuff, and he put his optics in there and stuff. It was amazing. You could see the counterweights on the counterweight bar, but there's also some other stuff on the back end there. And I mean, he had thought it through, and he had all this electronics he had designed in there.
Bill, is that a reflector with no central obstruction?
It's a folded refractor, I
It's
believe.
a folded refractor. That's exactly right.
So there's a lens up on the upper left, and then there's a mirror down at the bottom. It's a very long focal length lens, and that mirror then bends the light back toward the objective lens at an angle, though, so that it then has the eyepiece coming off the side.
So it was wild looking.
That was in Florida.
Talk about a collimation issue. It's got to be hard to configure is that a non-symmetric reflector on the bottom then? That seems a very, very complicated thing to make.
The mirror at the bottom right is just a flat. So it's not that critical. What is critical though is and when you do this, you end up with a tilted focal plane. And so you've got to make sure your eyepieces and everything are tilted and or have a corrector lens just before the eyepiece.
I mean, it was incredible.
Thanks, interesting.
And when you met the man that put this together and stuff, I just be careful not to, just describe him because it'll sound terrible, but I'm telling you, he lived in his pickup truck and, but he's like brilliant and he was able to do all this stuff. And then there's this telescope this is a huge mirror telescope here. And he built this specifically to look at the moon. And you're in so close on the moon when people always ask us at star parties, could you see the flag from Earth? Could you see the part of the lunar lander that was left behind and things like that? You almost think you can when you look through this telescope there. It was just amazing. And the design of this thing and the electronics and everything else that went with it. But you kind of get a feel for how big it is. But even here, it just doesn't do justice to how, I think it was 8 or 9 feet long. It was just amazing.
Is that the same guy?
What's that?
Was that the same guy?
No, different person. Different person. But if this is a telescope built for a specific purpose, and that was the only thing that you looked at with it was the moon. Yeah, so it was all optimized for that. It was cool.
Looks like it's getting ready to fire some pumpkins out of the pumpkin chunking machine. Or
yeah, you could hurt somebody.
I mean, that base is amazingly. That's just a lot of metal there.
Yeah. It was something. There are a lot of different telescopes down there. And the Florida Star Party, by the way, the date is set for the end of January into the first days of February down in the Florida Keys. And I don't think it'll get canceled this year. And so hopefully you'll be able to go down and with others from the club. We kind of set up our own little tent city with people in our group. We have not that are friends beyond Howard Astronomical League, and we have a real nice time for a week down there. And that's nice being able to set up a telescope for a week and not touch it when you go to set it up, turn it on the next day, and you just turn it on and everything's already lined up and everything else, you just start working. So definitely stay up most of the night. This weather's wise too. And then, I knew we were going to be running out of time, so I didn't get into a whole lot of time spent on mounts because we could have an entire meeting on mounts, but there's a lot of different kinds. And I have to tell you, for those of you who are new to this, for those of you who aren't, you've already got the experience that a quality telescope, a high quality telescope, a good quality telescope on a poor quality mount is a total waste of money for both. It's
all about the mount.
It's all about the mount. I mean, I'll give you guys the opportunity here to give your viewpoints on the topic. But mounts that if you're doing visual and it's always shaking every time you touch it to focus it or whatever, you're having a poor experience. If you have to wait for the telescope to start shaking, if it shakes when you put your eye on, bump it into the eyepiece, it's a poor experience. If you're doing imaging over where you need to keep your exposure for periods of time and it's not tracking properly, even though it's aligned properly, that's a problem. Or if you have too much backlash or whatever's going on, but maybe somebody else could talk about that. But there's a lot of different kinds of mounts out there. And this also falls under the, what could you handle? What could you do? But you really need to understand what you want to do when you're deciding on a mount, because you could overspend on a mount. And it's not because what we talked about at the beginning of the meeting tonight where somebody's trying to oversell you, but you could overspend on amount because it's just, it'll handle way more weight than you're ever going to use, or it's got capabilities that you're never going to use, and you're paying for it all. On the other side, you could maybe want to do things and you decided, well, you're going to save a couple $100, and then it's going to cost you thousands of dollars later on because you didn't spend a couple $100 now. So anybody want to jump in and share anything on this topic?
If you're going to overpay for something, overpay for your mount.
But I want to jump in and talk to Steve. He just received delivery on an 8-inch Dobsonian telescope, and you're not showing a Dobsonian mount here. So I don't want him to get the impression that Dobsonian mounts are no good. Dobsonian mounts are very good for what they're designed to do. They're not designed for photography. They're not designed typically anyway for computerization or anything like that. For visual mounts with a Newtonian type telescope, you know, they are very stable and they will provide you with very good views.
Thank you. You're also pointing that out.
Yeah,
I heard
I
every
mean,
word,
there's if you wanted to have an 8 or a 10-inch aperture and sling that around on anything other than a Dobsonian mount, I mean, it's like, well, it's gonna be really hard and really expensive to deal with that, you know, like that's why it's so good as a first telescope. And also when you start with a Dobsonian mount, you don't get all the like computerized stuff. I mean, that was my first telescope, was an 8-inch Dob like 12 years ago, I guess. And it forces you to learn the sky, which is really helpful in a lot of ways, even when you're using computerized technology to do astrophotography and stuff. It helps if you know, like, oh, that's what I'm looking for is right over there.
That is the same advice that I've received Friday at the Star Party, that the advantages of having the Dobsonian mount, the ease of spinning it around, pointing, and teaches you, forces you to learn the sky, no matter how long you've been looking at the sky, which you might know, you always still learning things. Because I'm learning galaxies and nebula names that I've never heard before. Thank you.
Yeah, there are two, I'll say, very generic types of mount. There's the manual mounts and there's computerized or go-to mounts. And there's obviously a place for both of them, but you're going to get a different experience with the two mounts. So they'll provide you a different experience. They'll require you to learn different things. I'm an old school person. I had manually controlled mounts for virtually my whole life. And so I think using something like a Dobsonian, a manually controlled mount, is the right way to go because of exactly what we just said. You learn the sky that way, and you learn some very useful skills, such as star hopping. Okay, I mean, there could be a time when you get out to your observing site with your computerized mount and your computer doesn't work or your mount doesn't work. Now, what do? Well, you can always poke around the sky if you know what to look at. If you're just simply dependent on punching something into the computer or the keypad and tell it to go there, then you're pretty much done for the night. But if you know the sky and know how to use the mount on its own, you can still do some observing. So I personally like going the route of learning the sky with a manually controlled mount. But that's my position, that's my opinion. If you have a different opinion, that's fine.
So we thank you, everybody. You know, when we talk about the setup and everything else, we really, most of the time, with the exception of collimation, we weren't really ever talking about setting up the telescopes. We were totally talking about setting up the mounts, because the telescope is just the rider on top of the horse. And you know, where you're polar aligning the mount, you're everything that we talked about, from the operation, shaking it, the setup time, the majority of the weight, by far is all in the mounts, and the number of pieces and parts and the things that you could forget behind. So Wayne, the one thing you didn't say, is if you forget your battery, which has happened to me personally, coming out to the Star Party and having no power. So if you're not going to move it around manually, then you're just done for the night before you get started. By the way, same thing with the dew heater. I was out with the guy one night. It was so dewy. We were in West Virginia, and he didn't have a dew heater. It got dark and it dewed instantaneously, and he was done before he even got one view because he forgot his dew heater. And so when you have these things, but the mount is really, really important. And yeah, I mentioned that for me personally, that I've been using the same telescopes since the late 1980s and the very early 1990s. But I changed mounts several times to get better performance, to have more stability. And even if you look at the upper left picture there, the one on the far left, that's a Celestron mount, and I've got one very similar to that. And I had set up one night, just at one of the recent star parties, somebody accidentally kicked one of my legs on that mount, and it kicked my mount over a couple inches and knocked all my alignment off. And he felt bad, and I wasn't angry or anything else. It just happens. It's an accident. But I had to reset up everything again because everything had moved. Now my G11, like Brad's mount that he was showing earlier, if you kick that one, the only thing you're gonna do is break your toe. That mount's not moving. That thing is heavy and rock solid, and it doesn't move. So, things are important. But anyways, so I purposely didn't spend time planning to go into this conversation. We could go into this conversation, and there's all kinds of other things we could spin off from here. So if there is a topic that you'd like to have covered by the group and get feedback, just drop me an email, okay? That's the best way, and then we'll plan it right in, and we'll get a subject matter expert from usually within the club itself, if not from outside, to kind of lead that conversation. So just send me an email on the topic, and we'll definitely work it into this meeting. And I'm looking forward. I've been talking about it for a long time, to getting Astro schools kicked off again. And for everybody who doesn't know what that is, that's when we do. These are planned meetings once a month on the third Thursday of every month. But Astro schools could happen at any time. And because Zoom is working so well, we could do them. Doesn't matter where the speaker is or subject matter expert. Bob Savoy and others have been great in the past on running those Astro schools and leading topics of all kinds. And I really want to get that moving again. And that's just another project that I'll take on next calendar year. But anyway, so that's the end of tonight's presentations for the subject matter. And we're going to move into the topic. So I hope that was good for everybody. And I really want to thank everybody for your individual participation, because it wouldn't have been a good topic without you guys. So thank you very much.
And if you're working on figuring out what kind of telescope, just keep asking questions. We're more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you. So here's what was sent in. There's some interesting stuff going on here. By the way, this one's from Jim. Are you on, Jim?
Yep, I'm here.
There you go.
Yeah, so just a couple images from this past month. The one there with Mars, kind of cool. There's actually a dust storm, which is kind of like dying off there up at the South Polar region. And then that little dot there, that's Olympus Mons. So I was really tickled that I got both of those in that image. And then Jupiter from the other week, kind of some classic stuff, oval BA, a little white spot. But what I really enjoyed was this like bluish, dark blue-gray area here. That's one of the, like what they call hotspots or blue festoons. And that really is very sinking air, and it's very like hot region. And you can see in the infrared how different it looks. It's very, very stark and well-defined in the infrared image there. And that's actually kind of like when the old Galileo probe launched and it set a probe down into the atmosphere. It actually went into one of those hotspots. So you're looking way down into the planet there when you catch one of those.
Cool. That's great. Thanks, Jim. And Wayne.
So this was an image I acquired on one of our full moon impromptu star parties. Got through with all my engineering and had some time, and people were still observing. So I decided I'd take a picture of this globular cluster. This is M15 in the constellation Pegasus. As globular clusters go, it's a pretty nice one. It's also the only known globular cluster with a black hole at its center So it's kind of a interesting object from there. So globular clusters are clusters of hundreds of thousands of stars. They're basically spherical in shape, and typically what the stars you see are the red giant stars, which is why there's so many red stars that you see in the image.
I just love the color of the red and blue contrast of stars. Like you can literally see the young and old stars in this picture.
Well, then we could do an entire class on this. Globular clusters are like in one of my personal favorite things. And you can't always, so globular clusters are amongst the oldest stars in the universe. And some of those stars that you might think are young are actually vampire stars. And they're in binary or tertiary type systems where they're sucking the life out of their partner, and they grab on so much extra mass, they reignite and they turn blue. And that's why, because all these stars are relatively the same age. They were born at the same time in the same nebula system. And there's so much to talk about. I mean, we could, one of these days I would like to get Anna Freebell, who wrote Searching for the Oldest Stars, the book, which I actually have with me here on my trip, and have her be a guest speaker and talk about this kind of stuff, because that's what she does for a living. And that's been her career in astronomy, searching for the oldest stars. And she could really talk to us, but Wayne really captured, I mean, for something that wasn't planned, not just the colors and everything, but the resolution is really great.
Well, I have to say, I'm not happy with the blue color because I don't think it's real.
Yeah.
I don't think globular clusters have that many blue stars in them.
Well,
blue stars are typically the vampire stars that you were talking about, which I think you probably mean what they call blue stragglers.
Blue stragglers, right? There's a vampire,
or they're blue, or they're the blue horizontal branch stars. And most of the stars in globular clusters are red giants and old red stars. So.
Yes. Yeah.
I think with Phil's description, I was thinking we should change their name to Blue Stranglers.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool. I mean,
thank you.
That's a great picture to teach from, though.
So question. So the relationship between these and galaxies, I mean, are these like failed galaxies that didn't fully form, or like the remains of galaxies that died long ago, or that changed long ago, or what?
Globular clusters are this globular cluster is part of the Milky Way galaxy. It is not a failed galaxy.
Okay.
They are just clusters of stars that formed early in the formation of the galaxy, and they orbit the center of the galaxy in highly elliptical orbits. So the population of globular clusters forms a spherical distribution pretty much around the center of our galaxy. So.
And is that true? So when you talk about other globular clusters, I mean, first of all, can we even see ones that are outside of the Milky Way?
Yes.
Okay. And do they have that same relationship that you just mentioned about, circling the center of the galaxy that they're in?
We observe them to be pretty much spherically distributed around the centers of other galaxies. In fact, it was partly the distribution of Milky Way globular clusters that told astronomers back in the early 20th century that we're really not at the center of our galaxy, because we are not at the center of the distribution of globular clusters. Okay, so yes, we do. There are globular clusters visible in other galaxies, principally Andromeda. A few of them, if you have a large enough telescope and dark enough sky, you can actually see them visually through the telescope. Most of them are photographic, but we also see globular clusters around, in particular, like the Sombrero galaxy. There has a tremendously large population of globular clusters.
And so do we know what causes them, or what? I mean, are they just held together by, gravity between the stars, or what?
Yes, they are held together by the mutual gravity. That's why they're concentrated at the center of the image. They really are spherically distributions of stars with a higher concentration at the center. All the stars are orbiting the center of the cluster, probably in highly elliptical orbits, because that's how you get spherical distributions. If you have nice rotation, you get a disk rather than a spherical distribution. Okay, so yeah, it just, when the galaxy was forming, so part of the gas collapsed into spherical globules that then further broke down into stars that form these globular clusters.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Very cool.
Oh, Wayne, I have a couple of questions about this image.
Okay.
One of the questions is there any indication that dark matter holds the globular cluster together? And number two is, do you know what M15's rate of orbit around the galaxy is?
Okay, I'm not a dark matter expert, but it's my understanding that dark matter doesn't really work at that small a scale. But if there's a dark matter person out there, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be corrected. As for the orbital periods are typically the same as the orbital periods in the disk. So it's probably, these things probably orbit the center of the galaxy about once every 250 million years.
Got it. Well, thank you, Wayne.
It's basically Kepler's third law. So, it applies to everything. So.
And that'll be taught in the next Astro school. So, Brad.
Bye, Phil.
Hey.
Hi.
Yeah.
So this is an image that I took of the Cocoon Nebula, which is this image is taken through narrowband filters, which means the only light that passes through the filter is light that is emitted by hydrogen and oxygen. This is a bicolor image. I only took data from hydrogen and oxygen. A lot of times when you see the Cocoon Nebula, it would be red and it's orange because of the way that I use the narrowband filters to take this image. So the orange part in this picture is an emission nebula. It's making its own light and is kind of like a stellar nursery type area of stars being born and such. And then you can see kind of trailing off and up diagonally to the upper right hand part of the area, like a dark trail kind of stellar dust and whatnot that's actually obscuring the stars behind it. And a lot of times you'll see this, the reason that I have this frame the way that I do is essentially just out of laziness, because I didn't want to have to retake my flats. So I just kind of took it the way the camera was already pointing. But I could have probably gotten more of that dust trail if I had tried.
That's great. Thank you. There's another one, Brad.
Oh, yeah. So this, I sent this out in the HAL email. I think that the same night that I took this picture, there was a star party going on, and a lot of people saw it. At
I posted the video.
So I was standing on the back of my boat, and so I live at Lake Linganore in Frederick County, and I have this pedal powered boat. My wife is pedaling us around, right? And she points and says, "Hey, what's that?" And I turn around and I look, I'm like, holy shit. So I just happen to have my phone. I normally don't carry it with me when I'm on the boat. And I had it and I pulled it out and I took that picture. And man, that's if you don't know what this is, it's the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that launched, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I don't remember exactly what day it was. But man, that thing was cooking. It was moving across the sky. So I just happened to get it right at the perfect time. You can see it reflected in the lake. I love this picture so much. I'm so glad I got it.
Not only that, Brad, if you look just above to the left, that's Saturn.
Oh, I never realized that.
Yeah.
Great
So,
picture.
because I got the video,
Oh man.
Richard and Wayne and others out there at Alpha Ridge, and we looked up, and I thought for sure it was so bright that it had to be coming from Wallace.
Yeah, right. It didn't even occur to me.
But it was and we checked, and Wayne pulled up his app on his phone, and it turned out coming from Cape Canaveral, and so we got the moving video of it going across, and Richard had his large Orion binocular out there, and Richard Orr, and he could see the solid rocket boosters and the main engine burn.
Wow.
We
Yeah,
got-
I really
got
wish I
videoing
had
it before
binoculars on me. When I was on the boat, I was like, man, why don't I have my binoculars?
Yeah, it was, but Richard could talk to what he saw there, but it was cool. Especially it was completely unexpected.
Well, I just hope we get more of them. It was very impressive. I wish I'd have been more ready for it. It was such a surprise.
Yeah.
And then there was another rocket launch a couple weeks ago when we were out. And unfortunately, though, that one they were very discourteous and they launched in a different direction, so we never saw it, over here. But it was really cool. That's a great picture.
Thanks.
Yeah, and there's another one, Brad. This is from the today's is sponsored by the Brad Martin Gallery here. So we have plenty of Brad this week.
It's been really clear, so I took a lot of pictures. Plus, I have 2 setups that I run. So this is actually my portable setup. This picture is not taken by my big refractor that you saw a picture of earlier. This is a little. I have a 60 millimeter refractor that takes a much wider field with a color camera instead of a mono camera. Now I was using a narrowband filter for this, but this is the Heart Nebula, which is again an emission nebula. I spent a ton of time last year with this nebula. I did a mosaic using my big telescope. I did a 12-panel mosaic of this nebula and its friend, the Sol Nebula. But the Heart Nebula, this is one of my favorite things to image. I really, really like the way that it looks. It has some interesting features. It's located in Cassiopeia. And yeah, it's this I had out on my deck too. Just
Brad, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
This is going to be relevant in a little while before as we wrap up. But how long is this total exposure time?
So I was testing out a new battery setup and it died halfway through the night. So this is like 4.5 hours of 2-minute exposures.
4.5 hours, and
yeah.
And then the other one, so we're talking hours of exposures to get this kind of detail.
Oh yeah. So
plus the process time.
With this one, it's a one-shot color camera, which means that you're getting all 3 color channels, red, green, and blue, at the same time in one camera. So those 4 hours, that's all a single shot. Like
I'm just going to keep that off to the side because you'll see why I'm asking this way this time, because Victor had one that we showed last month and I think he had 40 hours of data collection time.
Yeah.
And the processing time too that goes in. And how much time did you spend in post-processing?
Me? Well, I'm kind of slapdash personally. I really, once it's done doing the pre-processing, it's rare that I spend more than 10 minutes messing with it.
Oh, okay. So you really crank through it. Got it.
Yeah, I just do it and I'm like, okay, I'm done, and that's it. Like I don't spend a ton of time with it, generally speaking.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Very nice. And then here's another one.
This is the Pac-Man Nebula, which I just this is an image that I took through that big telescope with my monochrome camera. So I used the SHO show color palette, which is sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen mapped to the red, green, and blue channels. This image here, I only have 4 hours of oxygen data, which I just last night got another 8 hours of, and then I had another 2 hours. So I have a new version of this that's fancier. But this image here is this is probably close to 30 hours of data with the hydrogen and the sulfur. I had, I think, 16 and 8, and then yeah. Well, anyway, so this is again an emission nebula, which is it's emitting its own light, and these are those three, sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen.
For everybody, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour.
Sorry.
But no. And we only have a few more to go, so just hang in for a little while longer. We'll be wrapping it up here. And Brad, another one.
This is my Wizard Nebula, NGC 7380, which is the contest this month, I guess, in the Discord. But
no, good luck.
This is again, that's like 30 hours or so.
Cool. All right, so moving into, we had our meeting where Al Nagler was our guest speaker, and he was talking about the new night vision device.
That's so cool.
That I'm going to let, this is a Richard telescope with the night vision device on there. I'll let Richard describe it, and then Richard, the next is going to be your sketches, and then one of my cell phone pictures.
Oh, well, this is just the new night division device, which is at the very end of the eyepiece. It's connected onto a 55 Plossil, which he provides a converter down to a 67 millimeter, and that allows the full amount of light that comes into the eyepiece to go into the night division device. This is mounted on my 6.1 inch astrophysics scope, and it provides a 2.5 degree field of view. And if you put in a nebula filter, this, well, the whole thing basically triples the amount of light that the telescope can gather. So my 6-inch telescope basically becomes an 18-inch telescope. But if you throw in the filter for emission nebulas, the hydrogen alpha filter, it goes much deeper, and it goes much deeper than my 18-inch did with the O3. So I'm a visual astronomer, recreational astronomer, and I like to draw. So this has really revolutionized much of how I do my astronomy. These are just a couple emission. I don't know how many.
There's 3 of them coming, 3 total pictures.
But these are some of the more difficult ones that were taken from the Astronomical League of Bright Nebula, and you won't get the color with the new with the device, but you do get a good view of the emission nebula, and this is visual. These are drawings. That's what I do. I prefer to draw instead of taking the images. It's relaxing to me. And anyway, this is an example of it. It's the Lion Nebula.
So these are Richard's drawings using the device, and I also own the device. Now there's 3 of us in the club that have this device. And this was taken with my, Dwayne, this was taken with my cell phone. This is the Lagoon Nebula, and it was a 3-second exposure at Alpha Ridge that night, the same night that Wayne did M15, that beautiful globular cluster picture, was the same night the moon was up. It was very bright, it was full. Light pollution was there like it always is.
Bill, why the color?
What's that?
Why the color on the photo?
So the camera, the iPhone picked up that color for some reason, but it's really, look at it, it's white. It's just, the device has a white phosphor in it, so it's not a green device. So that I probably should have corrected in Photoshop to pull that color out of there, just turn it to monochrome.
I guess I'm just kind of surprised it picked it up that way.
Yeah, it's just something with the camera color or whatever, but they, but it's definitely.
It might also be the phosphor in the image in the intensifier. It may not be really white. It might be more toward the blue.
And you're
Might
just
be
not seeing
lacking
it.
red
That could
light.
be, that could be. So, but it's amazing what you could see. And this is what you see when you look at it with your eye. And you could change the gain, which will make a lot of noise in there, but you could see other things, you know, like everything else. So you just kind of tune it to where it's pleasant for you. But the globular clusters and everything are spectacular in there. And I've got a picture of M15 also that I did with this. I just didn't put it in the presentation. But so this is it. And this is the last slide for the night. But
I mean,
we're out there at the public star parties or the member star parties, and we have these devices. You guys got to come look through it. It just blows your mind, especially when you look up at the sky. Even my wife, who's not really into this, walked out on the deck, and you know, she's looking at we live close to BWI, and she's just looking at a wall of sky, nothing up there except for, you know, Jupiter and Saturn, which you could see, but nothing else. And you look through the eyepiece and saw this up there. You look up and you're like, how is that there? You know, so it's
wow.
incredible. So this turned my 5-inch refractor into a 15-inch refractor. So
That is wild.
The Lagoon Nebula with your smartphone.
yeah, 3 seconds.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that's what you look at, and it's fun. It just, you know, for a visual observer, which I primarily am, and living where we live, it just enhanced the hobby and the enjoyment, because you could just go out and see other things other than the planets or something really bright, you know, where we live. So
Yeah, well, give them the negative.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's a $500 setup at this
yeah, the
point.
negative is the negative is the price. So when everything was said and done, by getting, you know, we both have a 6 nanometer hydrogen alpha filter, which that costs about $500, just a little shy of that. There's a 3 nanometer, but it sells for about $1,100, which Richard really wanted me to get so he could look through that. You know, and then Steve Jaworski's also got one, and he didn't bite on Richard's request either. But and by the time you get that, the 55 Plaso plus the 67
Converter.
that goes in there, and shipping and handling, everything else, it comes to about $5,000 investment. So it's not for the faint of heart financially. It's a big bite, and it's really cool, and it's completely a military grade. The instruction book is from the Army. You can tell because it references it. And, you know, we're not allowed to take it out of the United States. We're not supposed to let non-US citizens look through it. I mean, it's really got all kinds of restrictions in there, but for the way that HAL made the adapters that will work with different things, there is not an adapter to put like a ZWO camera on there. Plus, I don't know that there'd be any value in it.
Right.
But because you can't, you know, you're looking at a screen, you know, basically. You know,
What size filters are you using?
that's a 2-inch.
I wonder if I wonder how my quad band Radian Triad would work through that, because you know you got the HA and the O3 and the sulfur.
Well, you know, bring it out next time we're going out. You know, we communicate on email, and we'll put it on and find out. It'd be to have a theory and speculate on how it'll be, because that'll be fun then to measure how the actual observation really compares to the
I
theory.
mean, if it's all one color anyway, then like
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's it. So with that, I want to thank everybody for all your participation today. I certainly enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did. And for those of you viewing on YouTube, I hope you get some fun out of it also and learn some new things. So anything else, anybody, before we close? If
Thanks for
not,
having me, everyone. This was very, very helpful. Appreciate it.
I'm going to stop the recording if I can find where that's at. And goodbye, good night, everybody. I'll stop the
Okay, good night.
Good night.
and,
Thanks for hosting.